So today's topic is relapse doesn't need to be a sentence, and it's important to talk about this, I think, around Christmas. So for those who are new to my channel, my name's Ashley Bloxham. I'm a therapist. I specialise in childhood and trauma, but I'm also an addictions counsellor. I've studied addiction and mental health, well, addiction and counselling right the way up to PhD. I've also can't speak today. I also can't speak today. I've also known what it's like for people who are loved ones who are struggling in addiction. So I know what addiction is like from all angles, and I'm here just to answer some questions on addiction and mental health. So let's get into the topic. I wanted to talk about relapse today because we're around Christmas time, and this is a particularly hard time for people with addiction, in addiction recovery. There's a lot more triggers. We've got a lot more spare time. We've got routine change. We've got financial stress. We've got, putting ourselves around triggers, situations where we're more likely to do the thing depending on the thing. So I think it's a really good time to just rehash relapse and triggers, because I know it's something I've spoke about, but this is a time where we're susceptible. So first of all, we all know that we need to protect ourselves from triggers. So try and not overexert ourselves. If we're going to be around people, say for instance, we've got an alcohol addiction, don't go right and put us in positions where we're going to end up drinking. But also, let's be real, we are more likely to be in situations where relapse is more inevitable, and we also might end up falling off the wagon. So if we do that, it is so important that we do not write it off as a life sentence. We don't just think, right, I've relapsed, that's it, I'm gonna, my life's screwed up, I'm just gonna go down that path again. It's really important to say, okay, I fell off the wagon, it's understandable, let's look out for the triggers. We know probably Christmas, potentially certain other things like, certain people that we're around, and just use it as information. Use it as information, because if we don't frame it as a full-on relapse, I'm doomed, then we're more likely to pick ourselves back up again, dust ourselves off and say, right, what's the lesson? What can I do next time to protect myself? And also just give yourself a bit of grace and just say, yeah, fell off the wagon, not ideal. It's going to be bloody hard to pick myself up, but it is Christmas time, and this, let's be real, is a really hard time. I always have the rule of, if you've already stopped, then keep your original start date. I think anyone who picks themselves up after what we call a lapse, not a full-on relapse, deserves to keep the start date, because you've worked hard to get however long under your belt, and it's really demoralising having to start again. So if you can pick yourself up, so you wake up the next day and you're like, fuckity fuck, I've done it, I've relapsed, just say, right, I'm going to keep my start date, I'm going to pick up, I'm not going to throw all of that hard work down the drain. I'm not going to throw my relationships down the drain. I'm not going to throw my job, my kids, whatever it is, whatever the reasons are that are keeping you going to the point that you've got to. I'm not going to throw that down the drain for fucking Christmas. Like, no. So yeah, that is something that I do, and I give you all permission to do it as well. But yeah, just be kind to yourself. I don't know anyone who, I have heard some people, there's some people out there, there's a few people who came on my channel who have managed to stop first time round, who haven't had any relapses or any little blips, but it's very rare. And the difference between saying, okay, I've full on relapsed, or actually, okay, I fell off the wagon, that's understandable, it happens to pretty much everybody in my position, let's just pick ourselves up. That is a difference which will change your life. How you choose to see that relapse will change your life, because you're either going to go full on relapse, or you're going to pick yourself up, be brave, dust yourself off, learn the lesson, and crack on keeping your original date. So Patrick has said 3 out of 100 addicts won't relapse. Yeah, 3 measly people out of 100 100, was it relapse or addicts? Yeah, I'm definitely in the 97, 100% in the 97. But the thing is, so since I have lapsed, I said last time twice, but I thought about it after, I've lapsed once since I quit the last time. And I kept my start date. I picked myself up and I was like, no, I refuse. Well, it was 2 lapses, but it was in the same period of time, like it was within a week of each other. And it was when I had quite a difficult, challenging time in my life. So I gave myself grace, picked myself up and thought, no, I don't want to be that. I don't want to go back to that life. And that's another thing we can do. When we lapse, like when we relapse, we fall off the wagon, sit there and say to yourself, right, I'm going to sit here and remember 3 of the worst times when I was an addict, 3 of the worst, most shittiest things that happened when I was an addict, and I'm going to remind myself of it before I make the decision of, am I picking myself up or am I going to go rack up some other awful worst times of my life? Because there's nothing worse than being in addiction, let's be real. It's really shit, it's riddled with shame, it's awful, and you really do have a choice. And if you can pick yourself up, then, and accept, I'm one of the 97 people who relapse. I love that fact. I'm going to keep it. I'm one of the 97 people who relapse. That's normal. But I'm not going to be one of the statistics of the 85% of people who don't make it past a year without relapsing. I'm not going to be one of those stats. I'm going to pick myself up and I'm going to crack the fuck on because I'm some boy and I've got this far and I deserve to see it out. Right, let's see what else people are saying. Hi, homepage. Hello, Khabib, sorry. Let's get on the packet, King Mozzie saying, well, let's not. Let's not do that. Don't do it, guys. Don't get on the packets. Oh, God. Right, hello from New Zealand. Christmas Eve. It's Christmas Eve here. Happy Christmas Eve, everyone. Day 939 clean. I love that for you, my girl. That is some shift. Fucking hell, I don't know what, I'm nearly 4 years. I'll be 4 years in February the 3rd. And I've kept my start date even though I had lapsed. 3 out of 100 sounds unrealistic, Coca-Cola. It really doesn't. So for those who've just joined, we're talking about 3 out of 100 addicts don't relapse. That, I don't know how that doesn't sound unrealistic. I don't know, I really struggle to find people who have quit their addiction first time round and not fell off the wagon. Sometimes we don't talk about it. We always hear addicts talking about when they've stopped, because you're not sitting there going, oh, I failed a million times this year. Well, not a million times, but honestly, I think it sounds very realistic to me. What was my drug of choice? Ketamine, a horse tranquilizer. God's sake, it was so bad though. It was ruthless. But let's be real, I loved it. Like, we need to be realistic. We obviously get enjoyment out of our addiction. I just didn't love how much it was destroying my life and bladder. Right, I hope you overcome your addiction. You were very brave to talk about it publicly. This will help others. Thank you. I have overcome it. I'm nearly 4 years clean. And I consider myself recovered. I honestly don't even, you couldn't even pay us to go back there. And this is the thing, if we do relapse, just because we relapse doesn't mean that if we can pick ourselves up, you know, you're adding fuel to your fire, because you're like, actually, I didn't fall off the wagon completely there. Like, it's counted as a win. Don't say it as a bad thing. If you pick yourself up, praise yourself, because it is fucking tough to do it. But if you can do it anyways, that's worth giving yourself praise for. Coca-Cola, I love care. I had a friend who was a nurse and I got medical grade. Were you addicted to it, or was it just something that you enjoyed doing? Because look, everybody has a drug of choice. That doesn't mean everyone's going to be addicted to it. So you can look how many people drink socially, and then you've got a portion of people who end up addicted to it. So I'm not here to judge. Miami said, congratulations to me on that chapter. Thank you. Yeah, it is good. It's such a good feeling when you get to a point of like no return. I think that's the thing. You do get to a point of no return where you're like, actually, that life is so shit. And I think if anyone's in addiction recovery and they're just like, oh, I'm just kind of losing the will to live, but I'm just pushing through it. One thing that I'd say is really important to get you to the point of no return, because that's where we want to get to. We don't want to sit here in this idea of like once an addict, always an addict. I'm always going to be susceptible to addiction. You want to get to a point of no return. And it's so important to do that, that we accept that, okay, it's not just about removing the addiction, because addiction serves a purpose. It's doing something. It's like we're not just doing it for no reason. It's either medicating some undiagnosed mental health disorders. So I think it's really important that we have a look at that and we explore that. And you can do online screening tests, which aren't diagnostic tools. But if you think maybe I might have ADHD or bipolar or autism or I don't know, BPD, whatever it is, you can do online screening tools, like say not a diagnostic, but it can give you information and then we can go to a GP or whatever. So undiagnosed mental health disorders do contribute to addiction, but also childhood adversity. So you can do an ACEs test online as well, which stands for Adverse Childhood Experiences. Again, free, it's not a diagnostic tool, but it can give you information. So if we want to get to the point of no return, we don't just remove the addiction. We learn, why did I have the addiction in the first place? It could even just be bullying, or maybe that's how you had low self-confidence and you felt confident in a group when you were growing up taking drugs. So work out the why, and then also think, okay, let's be real, probably not loving myself as much as I could be if I'm in addiction. So what one thing can I do every day that is in an alignment with loving myself? Because when you get to the point of no return, it's because life is good. Your internal world is sweet, your external world is great, and you couldn't even pay us to go back to the addiction. So work on cultivating that amazing internal and external world every day. Miss Marshall, what meds are you on? It works good for you. So I've got bipolar, ADHD and autism, and I don't take any medication. The only thing I've got is PRN meds. So for those who don't know what PRN meds are, it's basically, if I'm having a hypomanic episode, I'll have sleeping tablets for that for a couple of weeks, and I've got lorazepam, and it's just to stabilise us so that I don't go into full-blown mania. But other than that, the way that because I was on antipsychotics and I was on mood stabilisers and I was on ADHD meds, the thing that's worked the best for me is diet. So I got a dietitian, exercise, working on my mental health, so emotional regulation, working on my nervous system. These are all things that everybody can do. Super simple, easy things that you can do every day practices. And sleep, that is the worst. That is the hardest thing I've had to tackle, to be honest with you. Looking into a naturopathic doctor, I think they can help you a lot. I know many friends who've been helped out tremendously. I don't know what a naturopathic doctor is, but I will look into it. But it sounds, Andy, is that similar to what I've been saying, like looking how to do things holistically? Because look, no matter what we're diagnosed with, the majority of things, I'm not saying I'm not anti-meds, absolutely not. Like if we need to take meds, take medication. But we can certainly help ourselves, or even in some cases stabilize ourselves through just looking at simple things, which is our gut microbiome. There is a lot of research that shows that our gut is really responsible for a lot of our mental health. And, you know, I watched a documentary, which is on Netflix, which was talking about how there was somebody who it cured diabetes and stuff with. You know, we think, oh, we've got to go on medication for everything. Yes, do that, but also look at your gut microbiome. There's so much research around how much it influences our mental health. And we've got the gut-brain axes, we've got the vagal nerve, which, you know, it's all connected. So a lot of times people are coming to us as a therapist saying that they've got mental health issues, like I've got really bad anxiety, and actually if we work on calming our nervous system and also looking at our gut microbiome, that can be half the battle. The other thing is sleep. So incredibly important for our mental health, and there is so much research out there. And activity, exercise, especially with addiction, we get dopamine, and if we're looking at addiction, it's all around dopamine. LG, she's Def Hufflepuff. I am 100% Gryffindor. I am so fucking courageous. I'm so brave. Like, honestly, I get scared all the time and I just do it anyways. Hey, I'd go to war for me Ben as well. You're talking too much. Oh, it's all right. I've got ADHD. This is a perfect thing for us. Right, I have horrible anxiety and PTSD, but don't want to take all the meds they try to give us. Yeah, so what I would say is I would never say don't take medication, guys. So I had to accept my fate of medication because I was having psychotic episodes. And, you know, we need to think about recovery first. So like whether that's for mental health or addiction, like harm reduction first. But what I would say is within that, like obviously it's up to you whether you take your meds or not. I'm not here to tell anyone. But what I would do is with PTSD and anxiety, for anyone who struggles with that, I would really work on calming your nervous system. So we always think about anxiety, and I'll go into PTSD after, but we always think about anxiety being about our brain. We need to go see a therapist and do talking therapies. But that's only half of it. So we have two chemical reactions going on with anxiety. We've got noradrenaline, which is in our brains. That's when we start thinking about things and, you know, racing thoughts, rumination, catastrophizing. We've also got adrenaline, and that's in adrenal glands in our body. So it's a biofeedback loop. If you think of it like two alarms, our brains and our bodies, and if we stop one and stop the other one at the same time, we're going to have a much better result at calming anxiety. So how do we stop our bodies? We just literally, we do things like relax our jaw, relax our body, open our posture, all these things, and take deep breaths. So breathe out longer than you're breathing in. Now, I know this sounds so incredibly lame, but if we think of it like anxiety is a fight or flight response to a threat or a perceived threat. So if we're all tensed up, our bodies are sending signals to our brain like, oh, something's just happened. Like think like a deer in the headlights. Like, oh, there's something here. If we then relax ourselves, it sends a signal to our brain, oh, hang on a minute, we're relaxed. This isn't a threat. We can chill out. So just by relaxing your posture and your jaw and breathing slower, you're sending a signal to your brain. That's when you can then say to your brain, okay, let's chill out. I know I'm feeling anxious, but this is counterproductive because having anxiety all the time is eroding my physical health and we're getting nowhere fast. With PTSD, I've got an amazing therapist who does havening, and you only have to do 1 to 3 sessions. So if anyone's struggling with PTSD, just go on my website, schoolofaddiction.co.uk, and I can put you in touch with her. She's amazing. But it's something you can also do for PTSD. As if we're having flashbacks, we can do what's called bilateral touch. So it's like this, we can, it sends signals, so it basically inhibits the amygdala. And what you do is you like stroke your arms, or you can do your face like this, or your hands. And if you just do it now whilst watching us, you'll feel your body calm down. And if you do breathing with that and just, yeah, it will help in the moment. Right, let's see what anyone else is saying. I'm just going to scroll because there's a lot of comments, so I'm just going to scroll in and out so people can get a good chance of getting answered. I have an abusive wife who hits when she drinks. She's in a shame spiral and blames it all on me. I love her and don't know how to handle it. Daniel, if you want to have a one-to-one, we can talk about this, because I'm not just trained in addiction. I've also done some training around helping, supporting people who have loved ones. So if you want a one-to-one, just go, it's free. If anybody's listening and you want some support free of charge, go to my website, schoolofaddiction.co.uk. If you could give us a subscribe, though, that would be helpful, because I'm trying to get paid off YouTube to help you guys. But basically, if we're dealing with somebody who's got an addiction, so I've had an addiction and it's not something that people are choosing to do. There's so much research and evidence which shows that addiction doesn't come out of a vacuum. However, it's really important to remember that just because there's a reason why somebody does something, and this can be for abuse in general, like often when people are abusive, it's because they've experienced something in their childhood. But just because there's a reason why somebody does something does not excuse the behaviour. That's two different things. A reason and an excuse are two separate things. So it's really important that we're not excusing the behaviour. We can be empathetic. We can be non-judgmental, which it sounds like you are. But we also we can't excuse it, which really means that we've got to have boundaries in place. Like, if you continue to do this, I'm going to leave the room. If you drink, it can't be around me. If you're drinking, you're abusive, I know that you're having shame spirals, but there needs to be some accountability. That's not my fault, that's on you. So these kind of boundaries, but it's important that when we're delivering these boundaries, especially with somebody abusive, that we're working with a professional, I would say, to do it, because you don't want to do it in a way that's going to escalate the situation. And even if you don't have access to a professional, I would certainly talk it through with AI. That would be my secondary advice of how to deal with that if you can't access therapist. But you can also hash it out with me. Right, let's see what James is saying. She's dedicated her 24th of her time to help. She is definitely real, by the way. Thank you. Yeah, I am. I'm just trying to honour my commitments. I'm going to be here, obviously I'm trying to do my days, so I'll be here on Boxing Day as well, guys. And I'm going to be here at 10 o'clock, 9 p.m. tonight. Because I know Christmas time is a tough time for everyone. Let's see what else people have saying. How do I get over my fear of confrontation? Oh my God, yeah. This is a really hard one. If we fear getting confronted by people, it's really hard because a lot of us are people pleasers, especially when you look at people who struggle with addiction. The majority of people I've met and when I've been working with people are people pleasers, but equally just the majority of my clients are. Like, we're often struggling with mental health because we're anxious, and part of that bleeds into like anxious about putting in boundaries and confronting people who are basically being dickheads. So first of all, what I would say is start off by giving yourself grace. Like, it's okay. This is clearly a pattern I've had for the majority of my life leading up to now. Also, give the other person grace. If you're having to confront somebody, try and remember when you're going into it that we're all human, we all make mistakes. We're essentially just a bunch of walking emotional wounds, and we trigger the life out of each other on the daily. So just try and think, okay, this person's probably not being a dick on purpose, but try and go in with it thinking, okay, I can't, every time we're not saying something, one, we're being inauthentic. So every time we don't tell somebody how we feel, essentially we're lying, and it comes out in passive aggressive behaviours like sly digs or just like even just micro expressions. Even if we're passive, like we'll be giving off body language. 70% of our communication is not words, it's body language and expressions. So we're being inauthentic, and that other person's probably picking up on it. So you're doing you both a favour. And then do what we call a shit sandwich. So give the confrontation in the middle, start off with a bit of empathy, so that's the bread around the shit, and end on a compromise, that's the other slice of bread. So give them grace. Say for instance, we'll use the example of the person who's been raising the voice when they're drunk. Say we're dealing with a loved one with addiction. So we'll have empathy to begin with the shit sandwich, and you say, look, I know that you're not that you've got an issue with addiction, and I know that's not your fault. Like, I know you're not choosing to be an alcoholic, and I fully accept that. However, this is the shit. However, when you're getting drunk, you're doing things which are really hurtful towards us, and I just can't be around that. So I'm not going to be around you when you're drinking. That's the shit. End on the compromise. But if you want to stop drinking, then maybe we can hash out a way for you to do that. Maybe we can go to services together. So there's the compromise. And if you struggle with confrontation, I'd say start off small. So do little confrontations and just keep practicing. Practice with easy things and people that you love and will receive it well, and then build it up. Sorry, that was really long-winded, guys. Right, let's see what else other people are saying. How to talk to girls. I love that one. Right, okay, so if you're going to approach a girl, I would say start off really minimal stakes. Start off about approaching them as if they're a person. Because it's really difficult, because women do want to be approached. I'm not talking about all women, but if we look at the biology of men and women, so we're looking at it from an evolutionary standpoint, men tend to pursue women. Like, that's just biology. So women feel good when they get pursued, and it makes men feel good. You get a dopamine buzz. It's all to do with testosterone and stuff like that. So we want to be pursued, but then we've got all this issue around consent and stuff like that, and it's just a bit of a mess. So I would say start off talking to a woman like a person. So say, for instance, you've got someone in a queue next to you. Just talk about, like, and this is how I got pursued, by the way. This is like how my boyfriend spoke to us, but we'll apply to different things after. But he was like, what have you ordered? So start off the conversation, really generalised, low stakes, something that you would say to the same sex, somebody you're not pursuing. Then from this, gauge how they respond. Are they keen to talk to you? If they are, then say something different, like talk about something more, try and make them laugh. Laughter's always a good thing because you produce oxytocin. So if you can think of something funny, great. And just then keep gauging, like, how are they responding to it? So think about it like, give a little bit of energy. If they match the energy, great. Give another bit of energy. If they match that energy, another bit. And then we can start flirting a little bit. Like, say, oh, you look, I really like girls love compliments, but don't go in with a compliment. If we're at a point where we're like, oh, we're actually vibing here, give them a compliment. It's going to make them feel good about themselves. Try and get them talking about themselves. People love to talk about themselves. So yeah, I would say that. And if you can talk to people face to face, it's much better, because men and women gauge if they like somebody, if they are a good fit within milliseconds. So women will already decide if a man is someone they're attracted to by their smell. So that's biology. So women actually pick up on if someone's genes are compatible. So you know how you just, oh, I just fancied him. That's to do with if your genes are compatible. So if you speak to someone like face to face, you're already getting rid of people who aren't compatible. And we gauge people by body shapes and all different things. So yeah. Anyways, I love that one. That's a little special interest of mine. Look into the neuroscience and biology of men and women in dating as well. Be super helpful. You can use it to your advantage. Dustbuster, how are you doing again? Nice to see you. Going through withdrawals and detoxing off meth and painkillers. I was having the same dream every time I slept. Has anyone else ever experienced dreams by detoxing? Yeah. Every time. And that's not even a chemical. So you've been coming off meth, and painkillers, which is a chemical addiction. But even on a psychological addiction, it is very normal part of the process to have very vivid dreams. And I would imagine, this isn't something I know for certain, but just making an educated guess, I would imagine it's because your sleep's restless, so you're more likely to remember your dreams. It's something that will calm down though, just keep with it. and just think like, okay, this is awful, but it's a sign that I'm in recovery, because if I was in full-blown addiction, I wouldn't be doing it. So just praise yourself for the fact that you've even got to the point of vivid dreams, but it will calm down. Hi Bishop, how you doing? It's nice to see you again. Oh, hello Poopy's Boutique, that's my best friend. Right, I'm just going to scroll through and see if any questions. If anyone's got any questions around addiction or mental health, do ask. Oh, she's in the UK, I forgot. Yeah, fuck the government, Prince Andrew. Oh, I don't even follow the news. Just fear, honestly, fear-mongering. There's no point of us being stressed a bit over what's going on in the world, because it's fucking outrageous, let's be real. The nose ring says it all. So, nose ring. The reason why I've got my nose pierced is because I used to be so shy about me. I used to hate my nose. I used to have such bad body dysmorphia. I hated myself. I got a tattoo on the side of my neck as well, because I used to think, I hate this side of my face. I hate my nose. And I started working on my body image and like loving myself every day. So I started off doing, guys, you can all do this, it's called the 21-day kindness pact, and I just continued it. So every day you've got to do something kind to yourself around like self-love and just like boosting your self-esteem. And I did that every day, and I started working on my body image and body dysmorphia. So because I hate my nose, I ended up getting a piercing there, and I got a tattoo on the side of my face. So I thought, do you know what it is? As if I used to hate myself that much, that I used to put my nose and face down, and I'm actually just going to draw attention to it. It was like a little marker of like, yeah, look how far I've come, Ashley, like, well done. So yeah. When do we get to the part when you try to sell a self-help book? I've actually been writing a book. I've decided to write a book on addiction recovery. I've came up with a theory, so but it's more of an academic book than a self-help book. So yeah. Right, Chris. Oh, hi. How you doing, Chris? I've just seen you there. Yes, the brain is reducing during detox. Your new connections are formed, and your body will remind you of what it needs to function through life subconsciously. That need though is a lie. Fight. Yeah, I was subconscious. So like dreams are really interesting. We're not fully sure what the purpose of dreams are, but whatever lens you look at them through, whether that's psychology or through brains, like what's going on in the brain, etc., sleep science, it all kind of points to an idea of they think we're processing whatever's got data that's going on through the day. So if you're having dreams related to your addiction, and your recovery, it's probably because you're processing that through the day. If you look at it from a psychology point of view, so in counselling, what they say is that dreams is, because it's a subconscious, it's actually a way to access what's going on in your subconscious. So it can be a really helpful tool in your healing journey. So what you can do is you can look at it as dreams or symbols, because it's just a weird way of processing things. So you can think about, okay, what might that symbolize? What might this symbolize? And like, what's it telling us about my subconscious? And you can actually use it as an opportunity to delve into your psyche and do a little bit of healing. So you can turn so like any negative dream you can have, you can think, okay, what did that mean? What's that telling me about my psyche? Right, okay, let's see what else. How did you overcome autism and ADHD? I don't believe that's possible. You might cope with it, develop strategies, but you'll never overcome it. Yeah, you can't overcome it. Like, let's be real. But I will say, the more I've accepted that I've got ADHD and autism, the easier it's been to manage. It sounds a bit counterproductive, but the more I accept the labels, the more I accept that actually these are making my life really quite difficult, the less difficult they're making my life. But part of that is just like understanding my brain. So this is the same for anything, like any mental health, whether that's anxiety, PTSD, addiction, autism, ADHD, whatever. The more we learn about it, the more information we have, the more we can then, like you say, strategize it for it. So part of the thing for me, I really struggle with overstimulation, plan changes, a lot of stuff with my autism and ADHD. The more that I understand that, the more I can just say, oh, this is just my autistic brain. This is just my autistic brain running amok. And just acknowledging that actually makes it a lot easier to deal with. So I just think information is key. Like I say, sleep. If we can manage sleep, eating, exercise, that helps with all of them. And yeah, just little strategies. So yeah. I also fear curry people talk about women's ties in a stream. I don't know what you mean by that. Acceptance is key. I am both too, AU, DHD. Talking about it openly is incredibly therapeutic. Yeah, and just being around people who accept you. I think, so there's a lot of debate in the mental health arena around whether labels are good or not. So as a therapist, I was taught labels are unhelpful, that actually they keep us stuck. And then obviously, if you look at psychologists and psychiatrists, they would obviously argue, because they diagnose, that labels are helpful. So when I went into my training, I was taught like labels are unhelpful. But then I got diagnosed and I felt like this dissonance, like, oh, I don't know, for me, I'm being taught that they're not helpful, but actually I'm finding them incredibly helpful. And I think it's important that when we look at labels to be like, yes, it's information, but don't use that as something to keep us stuck. Like, we don't want to put ourselves into a box and say, oh, well, I'm autistic, so I can never do anything, and I need to like narrow my world and make it smaller and smaller. Instead, it's about, okay, I've got limitations, but also I can put in strategies. Once I've learned that information, I can work out how to, you know, like get over see it as barriers. How can I get over these barriers? What can I do? So yeah, I think labels have been super helpful to me as information, but we don't want to fall in the trap of, I've got this, so I can't do it. And there's some incredible research around this. So whatever we tell our brains, they will do. So there was this research around old people. I can do an air quote. So there was some elderly people, some elderly couples. And what they did is they put them into a house which was a replica of when they were younger. And they had like assisted stuff for being elderly in the house. And they removed all of that. And when they were living in a house where they didn't have these aids, they actually were able to walk without assistance. They were acting and feeling like they were 20 years younger. And it's because the message we tell ourselves, our brains will do. If we get diagnosed with diabetes, there's research that shows that we become more diabetic. So if we say like, I'm autistic, and accept the label that I can never do anything, it can be really dangerous. If we say, okay, I have autism, but now I know what I'm dealing with it, I can work with it and improve the quality of life, then that will happen. Which, to link back to addiction, is why I really struggle with this idea of, my name's Ashley and I'm an addict. Like, I'm not an addict, recovered, thanks. Anyways. Oh, I'm not answering that. Super. I'm not answering that. Right, okay, let's see what other people are saying. How do men activate? Oh, I'm not answering that. Right, okay, if nobody's got any counselling or addiction questions, I'm going to go soon. I need some addiction or therapy or counselling questions, please, guys. But I'm going to scroll around and see what other people have said. Jane is saying, how I hate myself, I have done for years. I'm so sorry to hear that. I can really relate. I think anyone in addiction is probably hit a point of self-loathing either before or during the addiction. I was just talking there, like what we tell our brains will do. Our brains are just, think of it like computers, and whatever information we're putting into it, it will download. So it's actually neuroplasticity. but it's the same kind of thing. So whatever data we're putting into it, it will believe and it will act in accordance to. So we need to reboot our computers, and this is where like therapy and self-help come in. But it's really important. So the way that we reboot our computers, our brains, is to say, okay, I'm not accepting the self-hate narrative anymore because I just don't deserve it. And I've got a photo of myself on my desk as a kid. And the reason why I did this is because I used to hate myself, and I thought, like, this is what I was once, a little child, and I thought, right, anything that I've got to say to this, if it's regarding me. There's no way that I would sit and tell this little girl that, like, you're lazy, you're horrible, I hate you, what a dickhead. Like, I just wouldn't do it. So if I wouldn't say it to a little girl, I'm not saying it to myself. So that was rule number one. And language is so important, guys. There's a full counselling modality called NLP on this. So the language we tell ourselves, but also if we're telling ourselves language, we need to believe it. So anything, I think part of the problem with self-help is it'll say like, tell yourself that, I don't know, like say for instance, I'm trying to think of an example. Okay, so I do it around like manifestation. Here's an example of where I think it's just absolute like codswallop, and I'm spiritual, I manifest. But it'll say, tell yourself that you're rich. Now, if you are telling yourself you're rich to manifest money and you're looking in the bank and you've got -7 pence, you're just kind of going to be like, no, because your brain's not stupid and it's just not stupid. So, I mean, so we don't just tell ourselves we're rich. We need to believe it. Now, if you were going to reframe that to something truthful, where, well, compared to the majority of the world, like 75% of the world, I am, because I live in the West, I've got running water, I've got food in the fridge. Like, technically, I am rich, and that is believable. So you can say that yourself. So if we apply that to mental health, thinking of an example, if you're saying you hate yourself, maybe, I'm trying to think of a reason I hated myself. So I used to put myself down and think that I was a shit person. I used to think, because I let everyone down. Because of my ADHD, I was constantly told I was a letdown. So I took that thought, you can take the thought to court, and I thought, well, actually, no. Yes, I am late a lot of the time. Yes, I do get mixed up. Yes, I forget to reply to messages. Okay, I do let people down in that sense, but I'm not a letdown because I'm incredibly loyal, and I'm really loving, and I care deeply about my friends. So challenge the thoughts with truth and just keep doing that repeatedly. We're rebooting the computer, we're resetting it to self-love, not self-loathing. So we have to create new neuroplasticity, which means practicing the thing every day. Right, let's see what else other people are saying. When someone projects something onto you, why does our brain freeze taking in these information? Because for me, I was expecting this person to be friendly and genuine. And what do you mean? Like, if somebody projects something onto us and we feel uncomfortable, or do you mean, are you projecting that just because you're a nice person, they're going to be a nice person? Because both them things happen, and it'll be very different answers. 3 years without alcohol, best choice I've done. I love that for you. 3 years is a good shift as well. After 2 years, your brain's the majority of brains have fully recalibrated. But I don't want to scare people who aren't at 2 years. It starts happening from as little as 3 weeks. What is your top tip, TD, to people who are struggling with addiction? Right. Let's say with this person. What about letting go of guilt from experiences that weren't your fault due to circumstances, such as not being a good parent because your ex-partner was abusive? Yeah, I think it's so hard. We carry so much shame. And I would say even to the parent like myself. So I relapsed during pregnancy and twice in the first year of my son's life. There's people who've, as parents themselves, have done things that we're not proud of, and it's really, really important for anything, like anything that we've got shame about, whether that's being an addict, whether it's about something that we've done when we're angry, or something we did when we're younger that we're not proud of, whatever it is that we're holding shame on, it's important to just give yourself grace. It's as simple as that. Just say to yourself, right, I am a human being who makes mistakes. There is not one human being who isn't newly born who has not made a mistake in their life. And people who sit there pretending they haven't made mistakes are bullshitting not only you, but also themselves. Everybody's got something that they don't feel like they've got shame about. And it's just about saying, okay, I did the best I could. I was always going to do what I did because nothing happens out of a vacuum. Dr. Chatterjee explains this really well. He says, in fact, I'm going to change it. Gabor Mate talks about this, and he says, we're fated to be the people we are, not in a spiritual sense, but the experiences in childhood and situations we have in our life are going to compound and make us into the person that we are. So that means that we were always going to do that thing. We were always going to make that mistake. We're always going to stay with the abusive person because we didn't have self-worth to leave them. We were always going to have struggles with being the abusive person because of whatever's happened in our childhood. So give yourself grace, first of all. Second of all, say, okay, I've made a mistake, but today I get to choose to do it differently. So if we're still making the mistake, today I get to choose to do differently, and I deserve to praise myself, because not a lot of people sit there, take a look at themselves and choose to do different. And if you've already done different, then accept that wasn't me. I was always fated to be that person. I looked at myself, I made the changes, and I should be fucking proud. That's what I would say to do with that situation. Right. If your trauma was a pet, would you say it's house trained now? Yeah. I love my trauma now. I've got to a point, I'd say if my trauma was a pet, it is the type of pet that sometimes, it's like my chihuahuas. Sometimes they go off and do the naughty and I get annoyed with them, but they're lush house pets. Realistically, guys, we wouldn't be who we are without the traumas that we've been through, and look, I've been through some fucking trauma in my life. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I wouldn't be who I am today if it wasn't through being an addict, having the trauma I had. But when I have actively worked on my trauma, and I've actively worked on giving myself grace for my past and loving myself unconditionally. So you have to get to a place where you love yourself and you love your life enough to be able to say, I'm grateful for my trauma. And anybody who does get to that point does feel that way. But it is about working on yourself so that it's like training the trauma pet. I love that analogy. How to deal with trauma. Yeah, so trauma, if we think of trauma, like, okay, so if we think of it like, oh, it's a wound, it's an emotional wound. So let's first talk about what trauma is. It's an emotional wound which hasn't healed. So just as if we had trauma to the leg, you might have had trauma to the leg a couple of months ago, and maybe it's okay. But if somebody knocks into that leg, it's gonna hurt, and you could be like, for fuck's sake, like, you've just hit me leg, like, had trauma to it a couple of months ago. So you're gonna have an extreme painful reaction, and then once you have that pain, you're gonna react to it. That is what trauma's like, except for it's subconscious. So it might be that we had this trauma, like, so talk about my sexual abuse. I'm not going into detail, but I had that when I was 16. And then when I was in relationships with people, that trauma would get activated when I was in new sexual relationships with people. So that wound's been hit, and then I'd feel emotional pain and then have an emotional reaction to it. So how to heal trauma is, first of all, accept it's a wound and we need to tend to the wound. Second of all, be aware that trauma can have you can get PTSD. So it's really important that we're doing two things. One, we're working through the trauma with a trained professional, because the reason why I ended up having an addiction was because I started unearthing traumas, like childhood trauma and sexual abuse, and then I ended up getting an addiction because it was too much for me to deal with. So that was during my counselling training. Second of all, try and stabilize yourself before you deal with the trauma. So that looks like nervous system regulation, practicing that daily, and emotional regulation and practicing that daily, so that when you come to it, you can calm your body and your emotions enough to be able to deal with it. Right, let's see. Talking about it gives it more power. I don't believe that. I think for me, personally, talking about it, right, there's two different, I get what you're saying. So there's two different things with like talking about trauma. So there's one where we're trauma dumping. So we hear about trauma dumping, where we're just talking about it all the time. Or there's a way of talking about it with resolving it. So resolving it is taking your power back from the trauma. So just talking about it and sitting in hate and resentment and loathing of the situation, loathing of yourself, that's giving it more power. Talking about it with an objective of, okay, I want to try and understand it. I want to understand its impacts on how it's impacting us today. I want to be able to make peace with it. I want to be able to let it go. I want to work out how to let it have a grip on my life. That can be helpful, and you can desensitize it. But what I will say is only talking about it isn't helpful. What we need to do is we need to think about the fact that trauma also impacts the body. So there's an amazing book called The Body Keeps the Score, and it's by somebody called Bessel van der Kolk, who's an absolute leader in the trauma field. He's one of the trauma titans. And what he talks about is that our bodies also store trauma. And you'll know what I mean, because if you think about it, like, say for instance, you were hit by a car when you were younger. You had it wasn't fatal, but you were hit by a car when you were younger. If a car comes tearing around the corner, naturally you'll tense up like this. You'll have a reaction. So your body can react before your brain can. So it's important that we're also working on somatic healing. Somatic's just jargon for healing your body. And for trauma, you might need a trauma therapist. So EMDR, havening for that kind of thing, tapping. Or you might want to do just like things in yourself, like working on your nervous system. There's a lot of different things. So I'd suggest research that. It's PTSD, yeah. I mean, it's not always PTSD. PTSD is a diagnosis, but like you don't really need a diagnosis. Like I'd confidently think I had PTSD because I was on flashbacks and etc. and disassociation and stuff. But if anyone's struggling with that, I would agree, read The Body Keeps the Score. It's a really good starting point. Understanding it is key. Anything we're dealing with, understanding is the first starting point, I'd say. Right. So we've got someone saying, fuck Jesus, keep your mind busy with things you love or like that you can do. Learn new things and it goes away naturally, or you'll just get triggered as much as your mind is elsewhere. Yeah, so learning new things is like, if we're learning a new skill, it's so good for the brain. So first of all, anything that we're seeing progress for, we get dopamine hits from. So that's really great. Like we want something where we're getting dopamine hits from. We're all little dopamine addicts. Also, it just improves confidence. So if we're improving our confidence in something, that improves our self-confidence in general. Like Jordan Peterson talks about this. Confidence equals self-confidence. So yeah, I fully agree with that. People can give up anything they want. Yeah, but I would say if we're talking about addiction, it's not always that easy. Like it's not as as simple as a choice. But you are right, we can do it, but sometimes we need to accept our limitations and say, okay, maybe we're going to need maybe we're going to have to work on some things first before we stop, like self-love, stabilization. Maybe we're going to need services or healthcare professionals, groups, whatever it is. But yeah, we absolutely can. Can't stop taking coke at the moment. Paul Bennett, if you want to go on my website, if anyone's listening and wants some support, I'm doing a free addiction group that's starting in January. But I'll also do one-to-ones for free for people in dire straits, because I recognise I can't fully support people on a live. So go on my website, schoolofaddiction.co.uk, and I will get back to you. Right, addiction group. Yeah, it's an addiction group around relational neuroplasticity. I'm going to help you rewire your brains from the addicted brain to the recovered brain. It's what my book's about as well. So yeah, it's completely different than NA or whatever like that. Natural saying, I'm in love with dopamine. We all love dopamine. We all do. We're all humans. There was a study which I've spoke about recently, so sorry if anyone's heard it before. But there's a study where they basically removed the dopamine receptors from rats and they put food in front of them, and the rats didn't even get up to eat the food and they all starved to death. So yeah, we all love dopamine. It's just people with addiction are flooding their brains with excessive amounts of dopamine. And then what happens is our brains try to compensate by down-regulating the amount of dopamine in that our receptors are transmitting between them. And that means that's where we build up a tolerance to it, and it gets harder and harder to stop. And life around us gets more and more dull. Right. I'm getting tired, guys, so I'm gonna do 2 more questions, and then I'm gonna scroll around from the top and the bottom. Jeeve said, thanks, I'm not joking, by the way. Abuse made me really, really funny as a coping mechanism. Yeah, I think that's part of why I'm really funny. I've experienced abuse, but it's not so much abuse, but trauma. It's a trauma response. So yeah, but you've just got to laugh. If you're not, you just got to laugh, don't you? Really, heal the trauma and keep the humour, and you'll be a weapon, an absolute weapon. Does reducing stimulating activity over time we become more sensitive to dopamine? So if we think about it, so what I was talking about dopamine is our brains always try to achieve balance, like our bodies and brains do. Brain is part of our body. So what that's talking about, we hear about dopamine detoxes, is if we are flooding our brains with something which makes us produce excessive amount of dopamine, overstimulates us with if you're talking about overstimulating, then it reduces it. Basically, our dopamine receptors have loads of little holes in it, and it starts to cover up the holes so we don't produce as much dopamine. So if anything in our lives which make us produce excessive amount of dopamine than what we're supposed to have, because dopamine is actually part of our everyday function as human beings. But if we're doing things like gambling, porn, alcohol, smoking, drugs, we produce excessive amount of dopamine. And they've mapped this out. You can go online and find out I think it's like alcohol might be 75 times more dopamine or whatever, like cocaine, everything's on this list, so you can Google it. So if we remove these things from our life, what happens is we then get a dopamine crash because we're not producing that much dopamine in everyday life. And what will happen is our dopamine receptors, because our brains are always achieving homeostasis, aka balance, will start to upregulate. So after 3 weeks, you'll start to produce more dopamine from everyday activity where we're supposed to. So yeah. But guys, I'm really tired. I'm gonna go because I don't like to stay on when I start getting tired, because my brain just starts to turn to mush and I'll just start giving you like false answers. Not full on lying, but pretty much BS. So I'm going to honour my commitments, even though it's Christmas Eve. I'm going to be here at 9 p.m. GMT time. I'll also be here on Boxing Day, 10 a.m, 9 p.m. So anybody who was new to the channel, I'm here every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9 p.m. Sorry, oh God, I'm saying it wrong. This is what I mean, my brain doesn't work. 9 a.m. Oh my God, right. Rewind. I'm here at 10 a.m. and 9 p.m. GMT time every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. God's sake, we got there. So I'll be back at 9 p.m. tonight. And if anyone has sent a comment that I haven't been able to answer or wants to be in my free addiction support group, go to my website, schoolofaddiction.co.uk. I will reply to everyone. I don't reply straight away. But yeah, if you could give us a subscribe as well, that would be so bloody helpful. But thanks to everyone who's came on. It's been really great chatting yous, and I'll see you tonight at 9. Bye.